I'll introduce Mike Borysewicz, our speaker, who has taken over. He's on our board. And by the way, we have a number of board members here, and we couldn't do what we do without everybody on our board taking a piece of the pie and working it. And Mike has taken on a variety of things, including our Save a Bird team, teaming up with Margot Wolf to lead that effort, the Kestrel Box project, and I understand we now have 34 Kestrel boxes out scattered around Spokane County, and that's largely to Mike's efforts and other volunteers who monitor those boxes. And the monitoring of the boxes is as important as building the boxes, at any rate. So Mike joined us about 3 years ago, something 2 years ago. Okay, at any rate, has jumped right in, and we're really pleased that Mike is with us. And so, without further ado, Mike, take it over. Now it should be working.
Okay, can you hear me? Yes. Okay, so before I start this presentation, I wanted to mention that there are some images in this presentation of injured and sick and dead birds. So I know viewing such images can be a little distressing to some people. However, I felt I really couldn't tell the full story of the Save a Bird team, what we do, without showing you some of the incident types that we respond to on a pretty routine basis. So I guess be forewarned. So in the summer of 2021, our region experienced a heat dome where temperatures got into the 90s and even triple digits for what seemed like days on end. And at that time, the Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife Spokane Valley office, as well as Spokane Audubon, received a lot of phone calls and email messages from the public regarding fledgling birds that were on the ground and apparently suffering from the effects of heat stress. Now, as you know, us humans can go indoors to an air-conditioned environment when it gets really hot outside. Well, wildlife really doesn't have that option. So in order to assist the WDFW frontline folks with handling that large number of inquiries from the public, Spokane Audubon Society board members Madonna Loors and B. Harrison began to take some of those calls themselves. And they responded with self-help advice and coaching. So things such as you can mist that bird, you can capture that bird, put it in a cardboard box, take it indoors where it's cooler and dark, and monitor it for a time, see if it recovers, those sorts of things. After a while, B and Madonna thought about exploring the possibility of starting a volunteer team that would respond to all types of inquiries from the public regarding birds in distress. So window strikes, vehicle collisions, sick birds at backyard bird feeders, and so on. So the team incrementally accrued volunteers, and they began to physically intervene in those situations where the public was either unwilling or unable to handle. And this was mainly with the large bird species, raptors in particular. It can be a pretty daunting thing to consider capturing a red-tailed hawk that was injured, for example, if you've never done that sort of thing before. And so the Save a Bird volunteers would drive out to the reporting party's property, capture the bird, and transport that bird to a cooperating veterinarian. So in that sense, the team was starting to function as a bird Uber service, if you will. And the picture that you see here is of board member and Save a Bird team co-founder, Bea Harrison. She has a sharp-shinned hawk, juvenile sharp-shinned hawk in her hands. And I believe that bird was a window strike victim. So when the team initially started, there was only one wildlife rehabilitator in all of Eastern Washington. And that was the wildlife ward at WSU's veterinary hospital in Pullman. Now, the wildlife ward takes all species of birds 24/7, and they provide top-notch quality of care for those birds. So they are an amazing service to have in Eastern Washington. However, as you know, Pullman is at least 70 miles from Spokane. So for Save a Bird team volunteers to take birds down to WSU on a frequent basis was going to be problematic. Fortunately, Dr. Mark Schrag at Hunter Veterinary Clinic on Indiana in Spokane became certified to rehabilitate raptors and corvids. And raptors, as you know, are eagles, hawks, falcons, owls. Corvids are the jays, magpies, crows, and ravens in our area. And since Dr. Schrag became certified to rehabilitate these birds, we have tried to take all those species to him to the extent that he's been available. And we literally take dozens of birds to Dr. Schrag over the course of a year. And had it not been for him, the Save a Bird team would likely not be able to continue operating at the same level we do. So the team leaders decided that we needed to write down what is the operating principles, or what are the operating principles of the team. They wanted consistency with team messages put out to the public. They wanted to avoid situations where one volunteer was telling the public something that was maybe contradicted by what another volunteer was telling the public. And so they decided that the first step in that process was to define the purpose or purposes of the team. And these are threefold. The first is to assist Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife, their Spokane Valley office, by responding to calls from the public about distressed birds. So in that way, the team functions as kind of a safety valve for the Department of Fish and Wildlife folks. And the way this works now is the department gets a call or an email from the public, and they tell that individual to go to Spokane Audubon's website, where you'll find a form to fill out with your name, your phone number, address, species of bird, and what you think is wrong with the bird. Submit that, and the Save a Bird team will get that form in our email. And so the person on the team who is on call for that specific day has the responsibility to respond to that email. Another purpose of the team is obviously to provide advice to the reporting party on a workable solution for the bird. And most of the time, all we're doing is talking to the individual on the phone, providing self-help advice and coaching. But there are those instances where it's necessary for a team member to go out and capture the bird and transport to a cooperating vet. And lastly, the team promotes public knowledge, appreciation, conservation, and hopefully advocacy of birds. The team does not attempt to save every bird. That's impossible to do, number one. We tell the public that we are a small volunteer group with limited resources, driving our own private vehicles. And so what we try to do is educate first and then make good decisions about exactly when and how we're going to intervene with birds. The response area of the team is essentially Spokane County. This is where all of our team members reside. Occasionally, we'll go outside the county, particularly for high priority species like raptors, eagles. And once in a while, we will meet somebody halfway, somebody that lives outside the county. We'll ask them to bring the bird as close as they can to Spokane. They'll hand off the bird to us, and we'll take it the rest of the way to a cooperating vet. Oops. So the team has decided to prioritize the species that we will consider for physical intervention. And raptors and corvids, the team decided, are the highest priority species for the reasons listed below. Some raptor species like ferruginous hawks and eagles are state listed. Raptors are at the top of the food chain, so they're important to the maintenance of ecosystem health. These are charismatic species. They tend to have high interest with the public. And these are the birds that the public usually requests our help when it comes time to capture and transport. And then care for raptors and corvids is locally available with Dr. Schrag at Hunter Vet Clinic. Species that are moderate priority for intervention for the team include passerines or songbirds, woodpeckers, water birds like herons and grebes, and so on. We have a third vet, Dr. Jocelyn Wood at Spokane Animal Hospital, who may take these birds provided her clinic has the room and the time and it's open. Otherwise, these birds are going down to WSU. And these birds, in general, the public can handle on their own with our coaching and our advice. And that's what happens in the majority of cases. The public takes responsibility for that bird themselves. Game birds are low priority for intervention for the Save a Bird team. Game birds are managed by the State Fish and Wildlife Department to maintain healthy, viable populations for hunting and wildlife viewing. So populations of these birds are at really no risk of decline, unlike many of our other native bird species. And numbers of some game species, such as Canada geese and wild turkeys, are increasing to the point where they're creating a public nuisance in some areas. If you live on the South Hill, you're likely aware of the increase in turkey numbers in that part of Spokane over the last decade or two. And then adult turkeys and geese, they're large, strong birds. They can be difficult to capture. They can beat you up with their wings. If they're even partially flighted, or if they can run, it can be pretty difficult to capture them, almost impossible to capture them. And so we tend to think long and hard about intervening with these birds, with these large game birds. In the springtime, we tend to receive a number of calls from the public, inquiries from the public regarding abandoned or lost ducklings, goslings, and in particular, California quail chicks, right? And in some cases, Good Samaritans may take like a quail chick home and then research, well, where can I take this chick? Where are there wildlife rehab centers near me? And if they call us, we ask them to please take that bird back to where you found it and see if you can locate that bird's family, right? And if not, try to locate a brood that has roughly the same size young, same age young, to see if that bird will be accepted into that brood. We tell them that's the best outcome for that bird. And we caution them that it can take some effort on their part. It can take some time on their part. And if they're not successful, then we tell them your only recourse is to take that bird to WSU, where they will attempt to foster it out. The team will not physically intervene with non-native species. So these include starlings, house sparrows, Eurasian collared doves, pigeons, domestic fowl, pet birds like canaries. We have gotten calls about all these species. And again, we tell folks, you know, we're a small volunteer group, limited resources, driving our own private vehicles. We have to draw the line somewhere, and this is where we draw that line. We tell folks that some of these species, these non-natives, such as starlings, for example, can directly compete with our native bird species for resources such as food, nest sites, space, and so on. We will provide advice to the public if somebody really wants to assist an injured pigeon or help a starling that's fallen out of the nest, for example. We'll provide advice, but we will not physically intervene with those species. And usually the public understands that rationale. However, there comes times when we have an irate customer who doesn't understand why we're not coming out and rescuing their pigeon with a broken wing, for example. We're not going to please everybody. Oops. So generally, we'll consider physically intervening with birds that are in distress due to hazards in the human environment, window strikes, vehicle collisions, things of that nature. So let's get into the different types of incidents that the team responds to. And these are just in alphabetical order. So the first incident type is cats and dogs. We have had dogs attack birds and gotten calls about those, but by and large, this is really cats outdoors. If you didn't get a chance to watch the November presentation by the American Bird Conservancy representative on cats outdoors, I recommend that you go to Spokane Audubon's website where you can find a link to that presentation, click on it, and you can watch it in its entirety. It's excellent. A couple takeaways that I took from that presentation were the fact that cats are the #1 invasive species in North America, if not the world. And cats kill, it's estimated, more than 2 billion birds in North America every year. So, huge problem. If I get a call, if I'm talking to somebody about a bird that their cat brought into the house and the bird is injured and where can I take it? Can you take it off my hands? I will send them, email them this form or this brochure from the American Bird Conservancy. This is a trifold brochure. So you flip it over and there's more information on the back. And I will tell them just what I told you, that cats are the #1 invasive species. They kill billions of birds every year in North America. And here's where you can take your bird. And we'll give them the name and phone number of a cooperating vet. Oftentimes, we'll hear that my neighbor's cat injured this bird, or cats in our neighborhood that are let loose injured this bird. And I tend to be more sympathetic in those cases. Collisions is the second incident type. Collisions make up the highest percentage of incidents that we respond to. Last couple of years, collisions made up a little over 30% of the incidents that we responded to. And great horned owls seem to be particularly susceptible to collisions with vehicles. And that may be because they're relatively slow flyers. They might be attracted to prey along roadsides or even crossing the road. And they tend to be pretty well focused on their prey when they're hunting. So it can be difficult if you were driving at night and an owl shoots out in front of your vehicle to stop in time. So the photo on the left is an owl that was struck by a vehicle in the Indian Trail area 2 years ago, I believe. We went out to look for this bird and couldn't find it. So either this bird was momentarily stunned and flew off after a time, or else it just walked into the brush or the timber. It was kind of a ravine situation that was timbered, and we just couldn't locate that bird. The photo on the right, that is exactly what you are seeing. That owl's head is embedded in the grill of that SUV. So our volunteers, Jim and B. Harrison, responded to this incident, and they were actually able to get the vehicle owner to agree to snipping parts of that grill away, I think with like 10 snips, in order to be able to extricate the bird's head. Otherwise, they could have damaged that bird just trying to yank it out of the grill. Jim and B took that bird to Dr. Schrag at Hunter Vet. He had that bird for a couple weeks, and ultimately it was released to everybody's astonishment. Window collisions, as you guys all know, take their toll on birds. The photo on the left is a chipping sparrow. The photo in the center was a little flock of Bohemian waxwings. These birds flew into the upper window of a house on the South Hill, and the woman was beside herself when she saw all these dead birds on the ground. She had put up bird-friendly decals on all of the windows of the house, except for this one high window, where she told us she had never had bird strikes before. Really felt sorry for her. And if you look at the photo on the right, you can see kind of the faint impression, that's a wing there, that's a wing there. This is the bird's body. This was a sharp-shinned hawk that collided with this screen door glass, was momentarily stunned, and then was able to fly off. This is our latest window collision casualty. This is a pygmy owl that originated in the Cusick area. I believe our volunteers, Chris Lane and Georgina de la Garza, met the reporting party halfway and was able to transport this bird down to WSU. This was on a Sunday. They had this bird at WSU for 4 or 5 days, and unfortunately it died, to the surprise of the vet, Dr. Logston, down there, because she thought this bird's injuries were not very severe. This photo is of a work party that happened, I believe last spring, at Turnbull National Wildlife Refuge headquarters. That's the headquarters building right there. We had volunteers from Spokane Audubon and Friends of Turnbull National Wildlife Refuge assisting the refuge staff with putting up these bird-friendly decals on their windows. The decals are just little dots that you can see spaced about 4 inches apart. And they break up the 2 inches apart, okay? And they break up the reflection in the windows, so it deters birds from striking the windows. When this project was complete, the refuge manager told us that the number of bird strikes on that building went down really dramatically. So pretty good stuff, I think. Other types of collisions. The hummingbird in the left-hand photo flew into a garage in the town of Newport, and there is a fan spinning overhead, and this bird got clipped by a fan blade. The woman actually had some experience as a vet technician, and she cared for this bird for 4 or 5 days, and then finally realized, okay, this bird isn't flying, there's something seriously wrong, needs to be assessed by a vet. She contacted us. I arranged to meet her friend or a relative, can't remember which, in Spokane, and drove this bird down to WSU. Unfortunately, that bird died of its injuries a day or two later. And then the great horned owl in the picture on the right impacted that barbed wire fence. You can see his wing is pretty badly damaged from that impact. We pretty much knew this bird was going to have to be euthanized, and that's what happened, unfortunately. So every spring, we get a number of inquiries from the public regarding birds that have fallen from the nest or fledglings on the ground and vulnerable to being attacked by cats, dogs, going into roads. So in the first case, the bird's falling from the nest. We tell folks, if you can find the nest, restore that bird to its nest. Usually they can't. They don't know where the nest is, or it's too high up in the tree. And so we tell them, you can try putting up an alternate nest for that bird. So something like a little berry container that's lined with something soft like paper towels, securely attached to the tree, and monitor that alternate nest for an hour or so to see if it's discovered by the parents. If that doesn't happen, your only recourse is, again, to take that bird to WSU. Dr. Logsdon at WSU has told us they will take any bird that has some feathers on it. They will not take naked nestlings. Just too much work. In the case of fledgling birds on the ground, when birds are learning to fly, they'll oftentimes crash and burn. Okay, they'll be on the ground. It can take them several days to learn how to fly. You can take that bird, put it up in a branch of the tree, 10 minutes later, it'll be on the ground again. So what we tell folks in these situations is try to eliminate all the hazards if you can. Keep your cats indoors. Keep an eye on the bird to see that it's not wandering into a road, that sort of thing, and let nature take its course. So here's a series of photos that show the process of providing an alternate nest for great horned owl nestlings. You're probably aware that owls don't build their own nests. And so great horned owls in particular will take over the abandoned nests of red-tailed hawks. And oftentimes these nests can be in poor shape, dilapidated. So a bird can fall through the nest. A wind event can blow a nest out of a tree. A bird can lose its footing, fall down from the nest to the ground. Whatever case it is, again, if the bird is on the ground, it's vulnerable to being attacked by cats, wandering into traffic in a nearby street. So in the photo on the left, volunteer Jim Harrison is putting the finishing touches on an alternate nest. That's a milk crate, I believe. The photo in the middle is the crate attached to the nest tree or a neighboring tree. The photo on the right is the birds in the crate. These birds develop really fast. And so I would think in another week or 10 days, they would be branchers, kind of clawing up the tree into the branches of the tree. And we don't attempt to put these birds back into their natal nests because their natal nests are typically in the top third of the tree. I should mention that. And so long as the parents know the birds are there, so the birds are vocalizing, the parents will continue to care for them. This is an incident that volunteer and co-team lead Margot Wolf went out on. In this case, the property owner was thinning his woodlot in the mead area. And unbeknownst to him, he cut down a tree that contained a Cooper's hawk nest. So 2 of the nestlings, I believe, were killed on impact, and then 3 survived. And so Margot brought a milk crate to the site, and she coached the property owner in putting the nestlings in that crate. And according to the property owner, the adult hawks found those nestlings and continued to care for them. Again, each spring we get calls from the public regarding orphaned, lost, abandoned ducklings, goslings, quail chicks. And I've already talked about how we respond to those calls. And this is a video that one of our reporting parties sent us. She had a tree that contained a red-tailed hawk nest, pine tree, on her property. And last year, a pair of geese nested in that nest. And so she came out to that nest one day to find this one single gosling on the ground and no other geese around. So she contacted us, and I told her, look around for that brood, see if you can find it, or a brood that has similar size goslings to see if it'll be accepted. Again, if you're unsuccessful, you have to take it to WSU. I cautioned her, this can take some time, effort on your part. And she actually took 2 days looking for this gosling's family. And this is what happened. Yeah, pretty neat to see. So, okay, next category of incidents we respond to is pathogens. You're likely aware that avian flu is going around with domestic birds as well as our wild bird populations. The fledgling or young northern flicker in the left-hand photo, we suspected had avian flu. It wasn't able to stand, so it would just be on the ground on its belly. It was able to be picked up. And the bird on the right had avian pox, which presents as those pustules on the skin. That's a crow, and that's the feet of the crow that you're seeing. Both these birds had to be euthanized. And I should mention that we tell the public, if you're handling wild birds, you should have gloves on your hands so as not to get disease transmitted. Shootings make up about 1% or less of the incidents that we respond to. The photo on the left is a volunteer, Sarah Callan Boggs. She's holding a turkey vulture that someone had shot with a BB gun in the Deer Park area. The photo on the right, our volunteer Joyce Alonso responded to. That's a juvenile red-tailed hawk that somebody had shot with some kind of rifle within the city limits of Spokane. Yeah. Toxic substances. If you look at the photo on the right and that sheetrock wall, you'll see some holes in that wall fairly far up. This was at a mill site in the Otis Orchards area. And they had a pair of barn owls nesting in one of those holes in their wall. And one day, some of the workers at the mill found this bird on the ground, and they were able to pick it up. So they knew something was wrong with it. It seemed to be sick. And they contacted us. We transported this bird to Dr. Schrag, who tested it for lead. It came up negative for lead toxicity, and he was never able to determine what this bird ingested to make it sick. He had this bird for, I think, about 3 weeks, nursed it back to health. It was returned to the wild, but we don't know what happened to the nest as far as any nestlings. We don't know the fate. And this is a photo of Sarah Callan Boggs, again, holding a bald eagle. This bird was discovered by a person driving a highway near Colville in Stevens County. And she saw this bird drop down to the road and kind of roll over in the road a few times. So she knew something was seriously wrong with this bird. She pulled her car over. She had a blanket in the back of her car. She grabbed up this bird in the blanket, took it home. She had her husband transfer the bird to a dog crate, and he got a puncture from one of the bird's talons in his hand for that effort, unfortunately. The following day, Sarah, in the picture, met the reporting party at Deer Park and transferred this bird down to Hunter Vet. Dr. Schrag tested this bird for lead, and it tested positive for lead toxicity, and this bird ultimately died from that. Birds such as eagles and turkey vultures and even condors, you're likely aware, will feed on carrion. And during the hunting season, hunters will leave gut piles out in the field. These birds find those gut piles, and if they just ingest a tiny fragment of a lead bullet, that can lead to toxicity. This is a case that we get 2-3 times a year, birds becoming trapped in buildings. And normally this is merlins that this happens to. Merlins are a small falcon, and they've learned to live in cities like Spokane, where they predate birds like house sparrows. And so what sometimes happens, we think, is a house sparrow will fly into a warehouse like what you see in the left-hand photo, and the hawk chases, or the falcon chases the bird into the warehouse. And once inside the warehouse, they want to be up high. Their instinct is to go up high. So it's hard for them to understand that they need to fly down in order to get out of an open door or an open window. Yes. So do you guys see the bird in the center of the left-hand photo? Okay. So in a building that has high ceilings like that, we're never going to catch that bird. Okay. So we tell the building owner, you can try turning off all the lights and leaving one door open, like a big garage door open, to see if that bird will fly out that door. In this particular case, one of the employees of this warehouse was able to entice this bird with some kind of lure on a fishing line down to the floor, and he captured this bird and was able to release it. So maybe that's something we will try in the future. This is a screech owl that flew into some garden netting in Deer Park. We coached the reporting party on how to capture this bird. He took it down to Dr. Schrag at Hunter Vet. Unfortunately, this bird also died from its injuries, probably a head trauma. Other cases of birds becoming trapped or entangled. We had a bald eagle that had fishing line wrapped around its leg and its foot, cut off the circulation to the foot. That bird had to be euthanized. We had a black-billed magpie a couple summers ago that walked into someone's garage, and the person had one of those sticky sheets for catching mice on the floor of his garage. And somehow this magpie got that sheet stuck to its back, so it couldn't fly. So we were able to capture that bird. We took it down to WSU. They had actually dealt with this sort of situation before. They were able to get that sheet off, and that bird was ultimately released. And weather-related, it's the last incident type. And I've talked about what we tell folks in these situations, mostly heat stress. And then there are other incidents that don't really fall neatly into one of our categories. The photo on the left is of Shayna French, who is in the audience, holding a male bald eagle. Shayna was driving down I-90 and saw this bird on the side of the road. Obviously, something wrong with it. She pulled over, was able to capture the bird. She took it into Dr. Schrag at Hunter Vet. And surprisingly, Dr. Schrag believed that this bird was in a fight with another eagle. You know how they'll lock talons in midair, sort of thing. Because this bird had puncture wounds on its feet and on its face. And I believe its tongue was partially severed, so it's hard for the bird to eat. It had to be force-fed for like a week or two. Oh my gosh. Shayna was saying that this bird was hand-fed for 17 weeks. Wow. This bird was sent down to the Birds of Prey Northwest for additional rehabilitation. It just came back last week, and Shayna and Dr. Schrag released this bird in the Clear Lake area last week. Yeah, pretty neat. The bird on the right is a western grebe. These are water birds. And grebes will sometimes mistake an expanse of asphalt for open water. So like a parking lot, or in this case, a driveway, right? And they will crash land on that asphalt. And because they have feet that are situated far back in their bodies, kind of like loons, it's difficult for them to become airborne from solid ground. They need water to be able to become airborne. So we coached the reporting party to take this bird to the nearest open water. And this is the video they sent us.
Start the release. Go ahead. Just lean him into the water. There he goes. Hi, baby. Okay.
Oh, another happy ending.
Start the release.
Oops. Okay, so let's do the numbers. This table shows the volunteer effort that the team did in 2024 compared to the year before. So as you can see, the total incidents that we responded to went up by quite a bit last year compared to the year before. The number of team hours spent went up, but maybe not as dramatically as you'd expect based on the number of incidents. And the miles driven by the team actually went down. And I hope that's due to the fact that we're getting better at convincing the public that they can handle situations with their bird themselves. Or maybe the public is getting more willing to do that, take that responsibility on themselves. We don't really know. This table shows the team actions taken last year. So for example, in 11 cases, 11 incidents, we took no action. Reporting party never got back to us. In the great majority of incidents, we just provided advice and information on the telephone or by email. And then in 90 cases, we actually went out and captured and transported birds to a vet, provided an alternate nest structure, and so on. And then this last table gives you an idea of some of the fates of the birds that we've taken into vets. For example, if you look at Hunter Vet, we took 46 birds into Mark Schrag last year. Of those, we know that 16 died or were euthanized, 7 birds were treated and released, and 23 birds we don't really know the fate of. So vets are really busy people. We don't want to bother them too much. They have their business to run. So we try not to make too many calls to them. And I'd like to recognize the folks on the team who are primary responders, quote unquote. These are the folks that are assigned a day of the week, 52 weeks a year. They are on call to respond to any inquiry that comes in from the public. And as you can imagine, things are picking up during nesting season. In the winter, it's pretty lax. And then there are fill-in responders, folks who once in a while will transport a bird for us, like down to WSU, or who will take a day for us when we can't ourselves. Then cooperating veterinarians, Dr. Wood at Mount Spokane, Dr. Logston at WSU, and Dr. Schrag at Hunter Vet Clinic. Have to recognize those folks. And lastly, I'd like to put in a plug for anybody in the audience or out on Zoom. If you're interested in volunteering with the team, we could use you. And please let us know if you can. Go to the Spokane Audubon website where you'll find a form to fill out for interest in volunteer activities, or talk to me after this presentation. And with that, if anybody has any questions, I'll attempt to answer. Thank you.
There you go. Kim, here.
So rehabbers require permits
Yes.
from the WDFW. And I know we have an international migratory bird permit from the federal government to do this activity.
Right.
And I was reminded of the rehabber permits because some of the last data that you presented are some of the things that they have to do with annual reporting.
Yes.
Number of birds received, and the what species and what the outcome was. Are we also under that kind of permit with this project and are required to do that kind of reporting?
Yeah, the Save a Bird team has a permit with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service to transport birds. So we have to have that permit in order to transport birds legally, yes. And so I send them data on the different species of birds that we've transported, but we're not vets. All we're doing is transporting, essentially. And I could actually find out from Fish and Wildlife Service all that data about the vets that we use. I just haven't done that. Yeah.
Other questions? Here you go, Robert.
More of a comment. A friend of mine and I were driving and great horn flew into the vehicle.
Oh, wow.
And we contacted the wildlife folks, and they wanted to use it as a teaching tool. They actually had a taxidermist that volunteered his time. Do you know if that's ever done with?
Yes, in a word, you may be aware of the West Valley Outdoor Learning Center. They have, maybe 6 or 7 different birds that can't be returned to the wild because of their injuries, and they're educational ambassadors, if you will. So they take them to classrooms and other events to teach folks about raptors. WSU has a raptor center that does pretty much the same thing. Yeah.
Any other questions?
Is the phone number, I know someone if they have a bird that's injured or something, do we just go to Audubon to gives us a phone number, or do you have a phone number for the team that we can call?
If you have a bird in distress, then go to the website. There's a form to fill out. Yep.
Debbie?
Oh, that's a merlin. The question was, what's the bird in the photo? That's a young merlin. Yeah.
Here you go.
Can you share one quick story that what's a big success or just something that you're proud of? Just a story from rescuing and transporting, just one.
That's tough. I think I've transported around 20 great horned owls. I don't think a single one of those owls has made it. They've either died on their own or had to be euthanized. The story that really stands out to me was that great horned owl that I had the photo of, that its head was embedded in the grill of that car. It's like, holy mackerel, how did that bird survive? But it survived. So I've asked Dr. Schrag, do you really want to see these birds that I know are on death's door? Do you really want to take these birds? Because you're going to have to euthanize them, and all that. And he's told me that, yeah, I want to see the birds. Keep bringing them in. It's okay if I have to euthanize them. So I don't know if that answers your question or not.
Yeah, and by the way, we offer Dr. Schrag a minimal amount of money each year because of the service that he's providing. It's more or less pro bono that he's providing that. So we want to contribute to that in some way. So we do. That's one of the areas where the memberships that we get from members in this room, that's where some of the money goes, is that kind of thing.
What kind of veterinarian services is he offer? I'm thinking, somebody asked us who's a good vet.
Yeah, I believe he's small animal. Do you know, Nan, if he does? I think it's cats, dogs. Yeah. 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 Pet birds, yes.
Yeah, okay.
This is not a question. It's a shout out to you and your team. I see a person behind me.
Oh,
I have used you twice,
Oh.
this team. First time I had a house finch with conjunctivitis, and the person was, this was all by text. She was great. She was really helpful. She was even willing to come up and help me capture the bird. I was unsuccessful, but I took the feeder down, I disinfected, I left it down for a period of time, did all that, just to keep the other birds safe. And she kept just staying in touch with me, which was really lovely.
Mhm.
And then gave me some great tips. And then most recently I was, I don't know where this cat lives, but it's somewhere in the neighborhood. And it was the first time I've ever seen a thrush in my yard, and it was attacked by a cat and it had a injured wing. My husband took it up to Mount Spokane. I submitted a form on your website and somebody responded. I mean, this was like 6:30 in the morning on a weekday, and somebody responded pretty quickly. And again, followed up with us, gave us tips about, education about what we could do for the cats in the neighborhood and educating the owners, but really helpful, really supportive. And I recognize it's really stressful. You're dealing with people who have a lot of stress because they care
Mhm.
about these animals. So I just want to recognize that. So
Well,
appreciate
thank
y'all.
you. Thank you. Do you remember the name of the woman that you worked with the finch by any chance?
I
Is
don't.
it elderly, older?
It was just by text, so I never
Okay.
talked to this person or saw them, but
Yeah.
they were great.
Oh, thanks for that
Yeah.
comment.
Speaking of cats, the November meeting that Mike mentioned before was a great meeting. The American Bird Conservancy's Grant Sizemore gave a Zoom presentation on keeping cats indoors, and we really want to start. We've had a few meetings with a few people because, well, cats are a huge problem. I'm a cat owner, so I know what kind of they're amazingly effective predators. At any rate, if anybody's interested in joining that team, we can use your help in getting, mostly it'll be an educational effort, trying to work with veterinarians and bird supply stores and other ways to reach the public and try to convince people that, you know what? Your cats can do really quite fine indoors. But if you let them out, they will kill stuff. That's what they do, anything that moves. At any rate, so if you have any interest, see me, because we really want to get that program going, because cats are, other than habitat loss, cats are number one for killing birds and other wildlife. So at any rate, sorry to horn in on you.
It's okay.
Do you have any other outreach like that for letting the public know not to put bird feeders by windows? Because that's real popular. They want to see the birds and the birds come in and
We do have, that's another, one of the things about a small organization like this is we have a membership of around 300, but we have a core group of maybe 20 people that do a lot of work, and we're spread fairly thin. And so two projects that I'm really interested in are window collisions as well as cats. And I'm also the president and the membership chair. And so, you know, each one of us wears about 10 hats. So we can use people to help with those things. And to answer that specific question, interestingly enough, if you put your feeder fairly close to the window, within a foot or 2 or 3, it's less dangerous for the birds than if you have them out 30 feet, because they'll build up less momentum. But there are very cheap and effective ways to protect the birds from your windows. At any rate, there's much work to be done in that regard. Educating people and getting people to actually install those effective systems on their windows. So I guess that was a long answer to a short question. Any other questions? I can talk to you about that. Okay, so her question was, where can she get information about where to buy the different systems that you can apply to your windows? And that information is on our website. It's also can be had at the American Bird Conservancy. Is a great resource for all sorts of things: cats indoors, windows, all lights out, all kinds of different things that people can do. That's their mission, is to help conserve birds throughout the Americas. At any rate, great website.
One of the questions from the Zoom is, do you share info about moving roadkill off the road so it doesn't attract scavenging animals?
Yeah, that's a good question. Our team is aware of that. And we've talked about it in our team meetings. So if you ever find a dead deer or whatever it is by the side of the road, and you see like a bald eagle on that deer, call us, call the Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife, call the county road department, state road department if you're on a state highway. Try and write down where that location is as specific as possible. Because if you can move that carcass off the road or get it removed by a county road crew or a state road crew, you can prevent potentially that bird from colliding with a vehicle. So, good question.
If there are no further questions, thank you, Mike.
Thank you, guys.
Really nice.